Hello, and welcome to what I hope will be a lively discussion around the role of sustainability, or ESG, environmental, social and governance performance, as it's sometimes called, um, in driving companies around the world to more sustainable and peaceful behaviour. We know that companies, like communities, suffer from the impact of climate change, whether it's access to land, to labour or to water. When natural resources are short or in short supply, there's an inevitable tension between the needs of the corporate and the needs of the community. So what can businesses do to operate in a more peaceful manner? How can they really align against the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? And do they need to sacrifice financial performance for sustainability performance? My name's Rebecca Gudgeon, and I'm a partner at Hudson Sander in London, where I advise global companies from telecom providers to palm oil producers and even some mining companies on the strategies they need to employ to behave and to operate more sustainably and to build the trust and the credibility of their various stakeholders. I'm delighted to be joined by an incredibly illustrious panel of speakers tonight who will all approach the subject from a very different sort of perspectives. For those who are not in the UK, Nadhim Zahawi is the vaccines minister who's overseen the very successful rollout of the vaccine programme here in the UK. And as of last week, he was appointed Secretary of State for Education. Nadhim, I'm delighted you can be here this evening. Thank you very much. I know you have a very busy schedule. And I'm looking forward to hearing your views on the role that government and policy can play in driving companies towards better, more sustainable and peaceful performance. We're also joined by Frank Haresnape, the Global Chief Marketing Officer of Pepsi Lipton, one of the world's most iconic and beloved drinks brands. Pepsi Lipton has a fantastic sustainability record, and I know that, Frank, you have chosen to sponsor Peace Day Live for a number of years in recognition of that. And last but by no means least, Dr. Darian McBain is a leading global sustainability director and has first-hand experience of dealing with some of the issues that conflict can cause in supply chains and can lead to abuses of labour rights and human rights. Darian was also this year appointed by UNGC as an SDG pioneer. And in the interest of true transparency, I should say that I have over a number of years worked with Darian as a consultant from time to time. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I'm delighted to have you here and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. I'm going to start by asking each of you a specific question to draw on your experience. And I'm going to start with Darian because I think what you have experienced and some of the issues that you have built strategies to address really set out the problem and really demonstrate how business can play a role in the creation of conflict, but also in the resolution of conflict. So I wonder if you could talk us through how you think conflict can lead to abuse of workers, so workers' rights, the social part of the ESG. And from your perspective, can ESG regulation and oversight really drive companies to find genuine solutions to human rights abuses?
Thank you, Rebecca, and hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here and such an interesting topic and something that we're speaking about even more at the moment. Though I thought for my answer to this, I might take us all back to 2015. Now, in 2015, I had just joined Thai Union, which is one of the largest seafood processors in the world, and I moved to Bangkok in Thailand. Now, at that time, I don't know if you remember, there was the Rohingya crisis. So this was when the Rohingya, who are an ethnic group of Muslims in Burma, or Myanmar as it's now called, and they were being persecuted and they were leaving in mass numbers. Now, many of those people were leaving by boat, and they were going out from the Rakhine state, and they tended to go through the Andaman Sea and go south down towards Malaysia and sometimes Indonesia. And that also took them via Thailand. Now, at that time, there were many really large vessels filled with people. It was a humanitarian crisis. The countries surrounding weren't allowing the people to come to land to find a new home and to establish themselves. It was definitely a conflict. People were in a desperate situation. If you remember the news at that time, people were stuck on these boats. They were starving to death. They were in a very bad situation. And what we found was that as a company, we weren't sure what to do. And there were two angles to this. Because one, there was the humanitarian crisis that was on our doorstep of these people on the vessels. But two, the boats as they were coming south tended to go through Thailand, and people were being trafficked both through Thailand, but also there was an increased incidence of people being trafficked onto fishing vessels. And as a seafood processor, we were buying fish from vessels, and we need to very rapidly make sure that people weren't being trafficked into what was our supply chain, so those vessels that were fishing, or being trafficked and eventually ending up working in our factories. And so it really did call on us as a business to look at our approach. And there were two lasting changes that came out of that particular crisis. Now, one was making sure that we really did understand any modern slavery implications in our supply chain, that we knew how our suppliers are, that we understood how people were recruited. But two, it was how can we make a real difference in an emergency situation? We produced canned tuna. It's one of the largest goods that Thai Union produces. And canned tuna has the benefit of being one of the few forms of protein that's ready to eat in a humanitarian crisis. We were trying to send our products, our canned tuna, to the people out on those boats so that they could at least have some nourishment, some sustenance. But unfortunately, those supply chains just weren't ready to go. We tried to work with the United Nations, organizations that were in Bangkok, and other NGOs, but that situation just hadn't been set up. And so as a business, we started our Tuna Aid donation program. And for all of the years since then and to this day, Thai Union has a very large program of donating food, looking at SDG to end hunger, and making sure that we can get food to people in crisis situations. We've done that through the pandemic and continue to do that. And I think it's a really good example of where in a crisis, actually businesses can help. They can be part of the solution. ESG governance is one part, but I would say a very important part is also making sure that business has a heart and that you take a human-centered approach. Think about the people that you are trying to have a positive impact on. It isn't just about the products or the services that you're generating, but it's also how you interact with the community.